understand the mystery. First, take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Hello, welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. My name is Sam. I study language and culture.
And I'm Dylan. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
And this is episode 65. We are going to talk about the phrase salt of the earth. But first, Dylan, what have you been giving your attention to? Can we just start with the question? I don't like paying attention or like spending time, because it puts things like our attention and our time into the world of capitalist economy, and I hate it.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you spend
Yeah.
time as if it's an exchange of things, or you pay your attention like it's something that you have. But anyway, what have you been offering your attention to?
Well, I've been offering my attention to a lot of things, but what is still running through my veins and in my adrenaline is that our dog almost got hit by a car this morning. And I realized how quickly things can get out of hand, and also how precious life is. In a split second, something can go either, not to create a binary here, but either very good or very bad. And so this morning, the door was left open because we were bringing in groceries, and or you were in particular. And the door was opened, and our dog Magdalene got out and onto the
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have like double doors, like a
Yeah.
front door and then a tiny hallway, and then you come into our actual house, and very rarely are both of those doors open. And our dog has stood at that door, Maggie. She has stood at that door many times, but for whatever reason, they were both open, and she ran today. And it was chaos because I took one of our kids to the grocery store. So, like, all four of us were there, and then Maggie just ran out, and it was chaos. And I think what's especially interesting about that moment is that it's something that happened, and instantly you were brought back. You had seen your dog in your childhood get ran over by a car.
Right.
And that, like, time traveling that happens, you like went back to that in your mind or body or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm currently reflecting on how fast things can happen in life,
Mm-hmm.
and also how precious life really is. I mean, there's a lot of Cocker Spaniels in the world. I'm not going to throw Samantha totally under a bus here, but I'm much more of an animal and a dog lover than she is, and which is really odd because she grew up having animals longer in her childhood than I did, but somehow I love animals, particularly dogs, and so we were both very upset. Our children were upset, but no.
Your nervous system is still activated.
Oh my God, nothing can replace our dear Magdalene. So
I love her, by the way. I'm not a
oh
monster.
no, you do. I didn't mean that.
But yeah, Dylan's more of an animal person. I actually just think that what it is you have the personality of a caretaker. You somehow have the discipline. I can wake up at 4 a.m. every single day and sit at my desk and write. I would never wake up in the morning. I'm just not wired. Like, I'm going to wake up and the first thing I'm going to do today is walk the dog and feed her and spend like 45 minutes caring for her. That sounds awful. But like, the other flip side of that is you wouldn't be able to wake up in the morning, but I'm going to sit down for 45 minutes and write a couple of words.
No. And I love to write. I write multiple. I always think that you write much more than I do, but I write little mini books a week for a sermon.
Your sermons, yeah.
And other things, but mostly for sermons. And so I do love to write, but I not getting Yeah.
I have some things in my life that I'm constantly looking out for because I can go off the deep end quickly
Mm.
with the certain habits. And um, I heard somebody say before to pay attention to how you spend your last 30 minutes and your first 30 minutes of every day. I'm pretty sure I've said this on here before. I know
Mhm.
I've said it to you, Dylan. But when I start to find that my last or first 30 minutes are scrolling on my phone, I know that I've started the descent into something
Mhm.
not good.
Mhm.
So I keep that in check. And I spend the last 30 minutes and the first 30 minutes of almost every day, the first hours and last hours of almost every day, either reading or writing. And I'm very
Mhm.
comfortable with that. And you spend your last 30 minutes for sure reading because you read in bed before we go to sleep. But you spend your first 30 minutes caring for our dog. And I think that's healthy for your personality.
Well, but yeah, but we do, the girls and I do breakfast
Yep.
together. I used to make your coffee, but now you drink special coffee, which I can't quite get. So but I enjoy that. I might grumble sometimes, but I enjoy that morning routine, not just because I want to sound good on here, but there's a part of me that likes that kind of breakfast routine.
I love it because it means I get to be upstairs by myself, either writing or getting ready without children, like opening the shower curtain. What are you doing in there?
Yeah.
I love getting ready by myself while you're with them downstairs, so
Hmm.
I appreciate it. There's a
Yeah.
lot in that moment, though. I just want to say one more thing about that moment, Maggie running out in front of the car, and you had to go out with your broken toes and get her. It was a whole thing. It was a 30, 45-second moment, but there was a lot there. You going into the past with your childhood dog, watching a boy.
It was a girl.
Oh, was it?
So it made it even
Oh,
more, well, there was a boy and a girl, there was a brother and a sister,
huh.
but the sister got hit. And so I'm thinking her name was Lady, and she was a girl dog, and we have a girl dog now. And
Hmm.
it was a too close of parallels for me. Um,
So, like most people, like many people, Dylan and I don't have many emergencies in our life. Day to day is pretty mundane, but every couple months, like every year, a minor emergency like this happens where your adrenaline rises really quickly. And when Dylan and I always compare what happens in us because when adrenaline is in our system because of an emergency, like our dog running in front of a car, Dylan is like woken up and his anxiety comes to the forefront in a very beneficial way. And for whatever reason, my reaction when adrenaline runs through my system, I calm down. Like everything is like slow motion for me. Not that I'm slow moving, but just everything, I'm perceiving everything very slow and everything becomes very calm. And I think that's interesting too. There's a lot in that moment.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But
So
Dylan got her.
we got her, she's safe.
Yeah.
Um, what have you been thinking about? What is on your mind? What have you been pining over?
I have been offering my attention to this is a surprise for you. I am almost done.
Ah! Wow.
So for
That is
Christmas, I don't
that
even
is a
have it.
surprise.
I don't think I have it within reach. For Christmas, probably back there somewhere. Dylan got me a book about language and the powers by an author named Walter Wink, who wrote a lot in the 80s and 90s. Is he still alive?
I think I actually I should look that up quick. I think he died.
Okay, so Walter Wink um, is he's a really excellent author, and for Christmas, Dylan got me three of his books. But the first one that I read, I didn't like, and it crushed Dylan. He hated that. I didn't like it because it was about language and the powers, and I'm really interested in language and power and the intersections between those two things, especially within the context of religion. But he really focused on the powers like hierarchies within biblical texts like angels and archangels and like that kind of like fallen angels, that kind of stuff, and I don't know, all kinds of creatures. And that's I'm just not interested in that, in that power stuff. I'm just not interested in it. I don't even think you knew exactly. Because when you read the summaries of that book, it wasn't upfront
I
about.
knew, no, I actually did know that it touched on that. I did not think that that was the whole premise of the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
uh,
my favorite, but this one is called When the Powers Fall.
well, real quick, Walter Wink did die. He died in 2012.
Oh wow.
And one of the reasons why I picked him, uh, because I learned about him in seminary. He was actually a Methodist pastor, but a very progressive or liberal Methodist pastor for his day. And I had some
He's
assigned
also a
reading.
professor.
Yeah, he went into biblical studies, um, and he was kind of one of the people in the early days of the Methodist Church that became kind of made the Methodist Church more inclusive. And so we had some required readings from him. So I thought, oh, I think Samantha would like him. But so, anyways.
So this book, it's a quick read, which is why I've been able to read it when Dylan's out of the house. Um, so I could surprise you on this episode. And there's a chapter in here, chapter 2, and it's all on reconciliation, which Dylan, you know, is a topic I'm really interested in. I read a book last year written by a Jewish rabbi all about the reconciliation process. And that's like a big fancy word, but essentially it's like the process of forgiveness. It's connected to forgiveness in a lot of ways. And I have been for a few years now on this quest. I think like most people, there's a person or two that I've just been angry at for a long time, and I don't want to be. And people throw around words like reconciliation or phrases that I can't stand, like forgive and forget. How do you can't forget. The action of intentionally forgetting puts the thing that you're trying to forget at the center of your consciousness. Like you can't just tell yourself to forget something and move on. That's called suppression. And suppression is like taking a blow up ball and pushing it under the water. It will pop up eventually. So I've just went on this quest of like, what is this thing called forgiveness? What is it? Because it's not just forgetting and moving on. What is it? And there's this whole chapter. Now, this is talking about nations, but can also be made small scale. But I just find it interesting. And this one's actually very good. I like this Walter Wink book. So there you go. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad there was a redeeming quality there.
Yeah.
Not only reconciliation, but redemption. That's good.
Okay, so episode 65, Salt of the Earth. Can I just start by talking about what salt means? And then I'm just going to jump into it, yeah?
Yeah, can I say one little thing real quick before you start?
Yeah.
This topic and particularly the word salt, and then its kind of broader reach and theme is kind of a little bit nostalgic for me. Because when you told me that we were going to do this one, you told me a while ago, and honestly, then I forgot what it was, and then I remembered once again. But it's interesting because this was the idea of being the salt of the earth. In seminary, my first year of seminary, when we were at St. Paul's, if you remember that, which I know that you do, but this was the lectionary text, the first lectionary text that I had to ever preach a sermon on.
Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And I talked about French fries.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nostalgic for me.
Yeah. Have you ever heard, Dylan, of the Sermon on the Mount?
That one I don't think I have.
So Jesus gives this long talk, and it's called the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 13, he uses the phrase, he says, you are the salt of the earth. Now, the you here, when he says you are the salt of the earth, it's plural. He's referring to his disciples, right? So he's talking to his disciples, it's plural. But oftentimes people, whenever you're like, oh, the salt of the earth, right? He's a real salt of the earth kind of person. Today, it's often thought of as like a real grounded person, a real down to earth person. Is that how you would say most people understand it, just in the greater world?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what it means. I'm saying that's what people think it means.
Yeah, and most people think that Jesus is talking about something out there. Like it's not talking about you, like your identity, but it's talking about like you have to get something, and make it a part of yourself.
Yeah. I'm going
Uh,
to talk about that. Yeah.
okay. And that's not at all what he's saying. Like that's really misreading the text. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I would say that you're correct. I haven't heard that in a while, but a lot of people have said, yeah, real salt of the earth, down the earth.
Which is what I don't even want to say that's not what it means, but biblically here with Jesus, that's not what it meant then.
Oh no.
It has evolved to mean that now, right?
Sure.
But when Jesus is talking about salt, right? So salt comes from the Latin sale, S-E-L, and Roman soldiers were paid monthly in a payment called a salarium, right? Which comes from this root Latin word, salarium. So you can see very clearly that salt and salary, like what these soldiers were paid in, the word salt and salary are actually etymologically linked, which is really interesting. And this becomes even more clear. Roman soldiers were paid in salt. They were like, it wasn't a dollar bill that they were being handed or a check that you sign in a bank cashes or deposits, right? They were paid in salt. So this is where we get our English word salary. I just find that really interesting. So
that's good.
Salary are related.
So I knew about the Jewish soldiers getting salt, but I did not know the connection. I didn't think about the connection.
Salt and salary.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for teaching me something today.
So when a salt as a soldier's payment, like if you keep that in mind, to call the disciples the salt of the earth, people don't like to talk about this. And I'm not saying Jesus was not building an army. That is not, do not understand me. That is not what I'm saying. But he was making a parallel between his disciples and the military about making a new kind of military. Again, I'm not saying he was building an army. That's not the parallel here. But he was making a parallel between, hey, the Romans have their military paid in salt, but you are the salt of the earth, and we are the new thing. Did I explain that well enough, right? So it's not a literal military, but Jesus was drawing a parallel between his community and the Roman community of militia.
Well, yeah, and there's this kind of relational connection between God and the people, or the followers, or the community, or something like that. Which can I share something with? So it's interesting because in the book of Leviticus, there's this relational, or sometimes we call it in church world, we call it covenantal language, this relational language between God and God's people. And it says this in Leviticus 2:13, and it kind of goes, I think, with what you're saying. It says, "You shall not omit from your grain offerings the salt of the covenant with your God." And so when you give something to God, or God gives something to you, it's that saltiness that kind of keeps it together. It's something both within and external, but something within that kind of keeps you moving and going. Does that make sense, or is that
well, no, so let me connect it to the Romans and their salt salaries, right? So I think it's pretty clear that Jesus was drawing that parallel between the Roman community, the Roman militia, and his disciples, right? Saying, hey, which is in line with everything he's constantly saying against the backdrop of the Romans and their oppression on the Jewish people and many people. But he's saying you are the salt of the earth, because we have to remember that today we think of salt as this common thing, right? Like, oh, the salt of the earth, right? But back then, salt was it was not something that you could depend on. It was not plentiful and not common. So there's actually a lot of ways this could be interpreted.
It was also very expensive.
Right, it was very expensive. So he was saying, essentially, you're of value, you matter. But it could also be interpreted as, yeah, those Roman soldiers get paid in the salt of the earth, but you're going this internal thing, right? Like, they're working so they can get paid in salt. I'm not paying you because you are the salt, like your value. Does that make sense? Like, the Romans are following orders of the emperor because they want to get paid.
No, that's exactly,
But
yeah,
the
that's exactly
disciples are following Jesus for an internal thing, not for an external payment of salt, right?
right. That's exactly when we first started out with Matthew's gospel passage there. It's people like think again like what you and I had said. It's out there. No, Jesus is talking about one's identity, one's
Mhm.
very own person,
Yeah.
um, and which also kind of correlates with that passage from Leviticus. It's talking about externally. You're giving a grain offering. You grew the grain, you're giving a grain offering to God. And yet the salt is the covenant that's within you that you have with God. It it's a both and relationship.
Yeah. Can we also just take a moment? How good does my background look? Because we cleaned the office this week.
Impeccable. Better than my kitchen
Fun.
cabinets.
So fun. Okay. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I have, but I just want to say it one more time in a different way in case anyone's like, what? This is a lot of connections. What are you talking about? But Jesus, again, an interpretation of this, once we know what salt was in this culture, which is why I love studying the culture behind the language. Once we realize that Roman soldiers were paid in salt, and it's where we get our word salary from, salt, salary. When Jesus says you are the salt of the earth, he's saying you're of value, but he's also saying these Roman soldiers need to look outside of themselves for value, but actually your value is right here. You are the value. You are the salt of the earth. You don't need to be paid in salt. You are the salt, right? Like that
Yeah.
feels to me very true.
Yeah. This is my last comment, but also the idea of one's identity being that of salt and being salt to the earth and connecting with God, particularly in this case through Jesus. Salt also not only through salary, which it was a payment of intensifying one's work to continue. So one works and then one's paid with the salt, and it intensifies them. Salt, unless you have some sodium issues, which some people do, you want to watch that. But salt intensifies. I mean, I watch a lot of like cooking shows, and I like to do different types of things. When you have something that is very, very bland, and you just sprinkle just a little bit of salt on it, it pulls out flavors that you would never know that were there, but it intensifies them. And what Jesus is saying it to us is, inside of you there is an intensity of your identity that you're called to open up and share. And so be like the salt that kind of wakes you up to that which you are. And when you just sprinkle just a little bit of salt on, and you know that that's there, it opens your life up to a closer connection with God, and it opens up your life to a closer connection to the community that you find yourself in. And so the intensity of the salt is also a big part of it.
Hmm. Yeah, good stuff. That is truly all I have. But I do think it's wild how just a phrase like salt of the earth, which has become kind of common and colloquial, is there's so much there,
Yep.
so much lingering right behind it. Good stuff.
Yep.
Anything else for you?
Nope.
Awesome. Stay curious, everybody.
Stay curious.